This is a PowerPoint on autism spectrum disorders and what is autism. It is one of my favorite topics because I've worked with a lot of people with autism and children, mostly nonverbal, and I try to type with them who couldn't speak. So the word autism comes from the Greek word autos, which means self. People often talk about autistic world and individuals who are stuck in their own world, who keep to themselves. But that is not how most people with autism describe their life in themselves, and you will learn about it in this class. I would like you to watch a video first on what autism looks like in very small children. There's a link on this slide. It's on YouTube, so please watch it first. And also there's a great documentary made by BBC titled My Autism and Me. It's very short. And also there's a link here on this slide, so please watch these two very short introductory videos about what is autism. No two children's minds are the same or identical, and different kids have different blockades, bridges, and tunnels. In short, autism has many presentations. It might affect Scott's language development, but not his physical coordination. Blaine may have a lot of emotion development trouble, but be a whiz at writing. Do any of these scenarios sound familiar? Serena loves spending time with her dogs and horses, but doesn't like to talk with people. Louis is a computer geek who types faster than you can, but he can't communicate anything legible by hand. Matthew can draw intricate castles from memory, but can't remember the steps in long division. Alina looks at the piano keys when she's playing, but can't look anyone in the eye when she's talking to them. These quotes come from Ellen Arnold in her book on autism spectrum disorders, a really, really nice, accessible book. A good advice to all parents and teachers if you are interested. If you Google autism, you get on a search engine on the internet, you get over 491 million matches in less than a minute, and these links also increase every minute. That's how popular autism is today, and we know more and more about it. So there's more and more links. Now, how do you make sense out of it? So this class will hopefully help you understand some of the current issues and research on autism. First of all, what is autism and how it is defined today? It is a syndrome that is recognized by difficulties in communication, social interaction, behavior, and perceptual organization. Symptoms may vary in degree of severity from mild to severe, but no two individuals are the same. You can, however, find the same characteristics or any combination of them among people with autism. But what is also autism? Autism is a unique way of being, dealing with our world, and doing things differently than most neurotypical people do. Where some people talk about behaviors, quote unquote behaviors, others talk about strategies to deal with sensory and emotional overload. The newest Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, with addition of it, does not distinguish types of autism spectrum disorders, such as Asperger's syndrome, but there are various levels of severity. So now we talk about autism or ASD, autism spectrum disorders, that involves many other different types and levels of people with autism. What is also autism? It is a spectrum disorder. As I said, there is different levels defined now. Children with autism are said to be unable to interpret the emotional states of others. They are said to recognize anger, not to recognize anger, sorrow, or manipulative intent. Autism impacts the quote-unquote normal development of the brain in the areas of social interaction and communication. Children and adults with autism typically seem to have difficulties in verbal and nonverbal communication, social interactions, and leisure or play activities. Some stereotypic or self-stimulatory behaviors might be present. In some cases, some aggressive or self-injurious behaviors might be present. Autism is not a behavior, emotional, or conduct disorder. It is also not a mental illness. And there are no medical tests that can be used to diagnose and measure autism, like there are to measure hearing loss or visual impairment. Here's a picture of an umbrella that shows autism spectrum disorders and what falls in this category. So the first one is autistic disorder, then Asperger's disorder or Asperger syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, and Rett's syndrome. The last one also is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. So this is from the medical point of view and the medical definitions of all these different severity levels of people with autism. If it is a spectrum disorder, what are the others then? So some characteristics of childhood disintegrative disorder are that it is a very rare condition. First, people were reported to appear with this disorder in 1908. It shows a later onset at autism, so children seem to be developing typically, and between the age of 3 to 10 years, skills that they already gained are suddenly lost. Rett syndrome is a syndrome that affects only girls. They have unusual hand movements. They develop pretty typically again when they are little. And around preschool, they go through what's called autistic-like phase, when they avoid eye contact, they scream, they have seizures, they bang their head. They have no communication, or communication is very limited. They might nod or they might shake their head. And what happens with this syndrome is it worsens with age. So as the girls get older, the symptoms get more and more severe. On average, their life expectancy is 40 years old, and there has been recently a gene identified that might cause this syndrome, and so people and researchers are trying to find cures for that. PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, is a disorder where the child has typically two difficulties: in social area and in communication. They are eager to make contacts with peers, but they act inappropriately. They do not understand social clues, facial expressions, sarcasm. When they are little, they typically do not babble, and then they have very limited vocabulary. So we might not see any other difficulties or struggles in other areas, mostly just social and communication. The relationship between PD and OS to autism remains unclear. It seems that those were children who would not fit into the typical categorization of autism, so they came up with a new category and with a new label for them. Here are some pictures of kids, and I want you to look at them and tell me if you notice any differences of these kids. Anything obvious visually on these pictures of these beautiful kids? Well, what happens with autism is that it is not a visible disability. Unless the child starts acting or screaming or not communicating, you can find out that there is something going on with the child, but if you just see the child, you would not be able to tell if the child has autism or not. What do people with autism say, though, about autism in their own lives? On the following slide, I try to put some portraits of children with autism. Now, can you tell who has autism and who not if you saw them on the street? No, you couldn't. But if they threw a rock on a passing stroller, for example, you would notice that there is something quote-unquote wrong with them. We tend to judge behaviors as wrong or bad, but autistic kids cannot help to do some things that we view as bad. Their bodies just impulsively move or act. Parents of these children often feel embarrassed and have a hard time understanding, because on the outside their children look like anyone else, beautiful, playful, social, just like children on the photographs right here. You wouldn't be able to tell. But if they do something bad, then right away you know that this child might have autism or some other disability. because no one would typically throw a rock on a stroller where there's a baby sleeping. That's a true story that happened. Now, we can distinguish between autism with lowercase a and autism with capital A. People with disabilities have been expressing pride in who they are since the disability rights movement. They teach us that it is not a problem to be disabled. The problem is in the minds of the non-disabled, non-yet disabled majority, who believes that being disabled is a problem. But after all, if we live long enough, we will all be disabled. There are groups proud of their minority, talking about identity, and they use capital letters. Deaf people, for example, write themselves with capital D. Crips, people using wheelchairs, write themselves with capital C. Or the autistics write themselves with capital A. When you hear or say people, I have autism with capital A, or I'm autistic with capital A, it means that they identify with characteristics of autism and they are proud to be autistic. In this class, I use autistic and autistic with lowercase and capital A's interchangeably. And this is what this class is about. That people with autism are always unique, totally interesting, and sometimes mysterious. Here are some characteristics of autism. People with autism may have affected, or autism may affect their speech issues, interaction issues, behavior issues, sensory issues. Also, you can see some splinter skills, which are these isolated skills like art or math, or computer skills that the child is very good at. There are also some biological markers. For example, they might have abnormal MRIs, or higher serotonin levels. Um, Sleep disturbances is also pretty typical. But the bottom line is that autism is a developmental disability that affects three areas mostly: communication, social interaction skills, and there are different patterns of behavior. But this can be advantageous to some. Does all this sound negative when we talk about problems and issues? Yes, it does. But autism is a mysterious world that is still so hard to understand for us neurotypical people, or neuronormal people, which is how people with autism call us, that we still need to do some more research to understand what autism is. What is true though, and what we must believe, is that all individuals with autism can learn, and each individual with autism is unique and thus needs an individually designed program. Here I try to list the most common myths of autism. It is certainly not true that children with autism have no emotions, need a lot of spanking, are born with autism. On average, they are diagnosed at 44 months. There are silent, like Rainman on this picture, and that autism is a rare disorder. I will continue about Asperger's syndrome in a different audio because it would be too long. So let's save this for another audio. Thank you for your attention.